may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, my dudes, what we are going to be doing here is we are going to be going through and dumpster diving. Let's talk about some of these wide receivers that are going very late in startup drafts. Now, the reason I had this idea is because a few weeks ago when we were going through and doing all those Patreon startups that we have done so far this offseason, I mean, we are going deep. I mean, we are 35 rounds in on a 12-team league, and by the time you get to round 20, there's nobody that you're interested in. I mean, at 20, you're going around going, is this guy still in the NFL? Is he going to do anything in Dynasty? So I want to talk about some of those players that are going after round 20 in those Dynasty startup drafts. Guys that I think if you're playing in a shallow format, you may actually be able to get one or two of these players off the waiver wire. Now, of course, if you're playing in what we play in, a 12-man league where you can roster 35 players, all these guys are going to be taken up. But regardless, I'm excited to bring you all this video. And please go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Please actually leave a comment letting me know your favorite waiver wire or just very deep stash wide receiver in Dynasty. Obviously, none of these guys are really going to be productive this upcoming season, but possibly you can have an interesting ad for 2022. Now, the first wide receiver we are going to be talking about is a little bit of a cheat here because I understand he's going way before the other guys in startup drafts, but I want to bring him up because I really want to set the tone with what we are going to be doing in this video. And let's talk about KJ Hamler. Okay, so with KJ Hamler, I understand that he was a rookie that not many people were into last year for great reason. I mean, he did go at the very middle of the second round with the 14th pick in the second round. And he went to a very crowded situation, and a lot of people were looking at it going, you know what? Well, KJ Hamler goes to a depth chart that has Jerry Jeudy, that has Courtland Sutton, that has Noah Fant, very bad quarterback play. I want nothing to do with that. And I understand that thought process. And another reason people weren't interested in him was the fact that he is one of those field stretching wide receivers. We talk about this a lot. We showed the historical research with our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, in that you see the wide receiver position being broken up by different positions within itself. I mean, you have your slot, you have your Z, you have your alpha X wide receiver, and then you have your field stretching wide receiver. And usually that field stretching guy isn't going to have that much volume, and you're not really that excited about drafting him. Well, of course, you have to bump them down your rankings slightly. You can't just completely take them off. And that's where we get to with KJ Hamler, because I'm looking at him and I'm going, well, you know what? This was a wide receiver that was 20 years old when he got drafted last year. He was taken in the second round. And no, you were not expecting him to be productive right away his rookie season, even with a Courtland Sutton injury, because he's 20 years old. This is a player that his game's more so built on speed, so he has to develop once he gets to the NFL. That way he can eventually possibly just be a low-end wide receiver 2 in Dynasty, maybe a high-end wide receiver 3. I mean, to be completely honest, that's his ceiling here with KJ Hamler. But you're getting him at a much, much, much cheaper cost than that. And if you go through, while I understand this upcoming season for 2021, KJ Hamler is not going to be exciting at all. I mean, to be completely honest, he's on a team that Drew Lock / Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the quarterback for. I mean, we all know that Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Noah Fant are all going to probably double his targets each. So KJ Hamler is in a situation where you really want nothing to do with him this upcoming season. But we need to take a step back. We need to go, okay, so while KJ Hamler is in a growth spot now, what is he going to be in 2022? Because we understand this is a profile of a wide receiver that broke out at a young age at Penn State. This is a wide receiver that was productive at Penn State, and he did run a 4.27 at that Penn State Pro Day. So there's a lot going in his favor. While I understand he's that field stretching option, you don't really like investing into those type of players. At the end of the day, this is someone that's going to have a role on an NFL offense. He's only 22 years old. He literally turned 22 years old just the other day. I mean, he is extremely young, younger than 90% of the wide receivers in this past year's NFL draft class. And what's impressive is Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick are not on this team next year. Now, of course, they can decide to bring back either wide receiver, but our analysis of Courtland Sutton last offseason and why we were saying that he was a sell in Dynasty when he was going around the same range of a DJ Moore, as we were looking at it going, well, you know what? This is a team that decided to draft a wide receiver in the first in Jerry Jeudy, then draft a wide receiver in the second with KJ Hamler, back-to-back picks in the 2020 draft class. We're unsure if they want to keep Courtland Sutton for the long term. And Tim Patrick actually got a significant amount of usage over the past 2 years now. So you're looking at both Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick leaving this situation, opening up a decent amount of targets for KJ Hamler. And while the quarterback situation is disgusting this year, I mean, with KJ Hamler, you're drafting him for 2022 anyway. So you're in a spot where possibly Hamler can come out and he can vault up to be the wide receiver 2 on the Denver Broncos alongside Jerry Jeudy next season. And maybe, just maybe, they have a better quarterback in town in Denver. And if that's the case, I really like this value with KJ Hamler. I mean, I think I would way rather have KJ Hamler where he's going in drafts right now compared to paying the premium on Jerry Jeudy. But please let me know what y'all are thinking here. I understand that KJ Hamler not going to be on any of your waiver wires unless you're playing in a very shallow format. And I will say, I mean, I'm kind of surprised with how shallow some of these formats y'all are playing in when y'all are sending them over to me on Patreon, where you're saying, hey, this is a 10-man league. We only roster 20 players each. And at that point, well, maybe KJ Hamler is actually on your waiver wire. But yeah, let me know in the comment sections what you're thinking. And let's move on to a much deeper wide receiver. And I don't want to say he's the best value in dynasty drafts right now because I know that phrase gets thrown out there way too much, but I don't understand this value in the slightest. Let's talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones. Okay, so we all remember Donovan Peoples-Jones. I mean, if you played Devy way back in the day, this is a wide receiver that was the top prospect in the country, and it wasn't even close. He goes to Michigan, and at Michigan, they have some of the worst quarterback play in the country. He's very disappointing. Really, nobody gets behind him until he goes to the combine. He comes in at 6'2", 212 pounds, shows that he has that size that you look for in the wide receiver position. He runs a 4.48 40-yard dash, and his vertical, his broad jump, are literally off the charts. If you size adjust it, he is literally, you can't find a comparison for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Just an elite level athlete. And surprisingly, after getting drafted in the 6th round last season, I want to say he had a decent rookie season where he had some flashes. He had some plays where he came through, and you didn't see that play consistently for Donovan Peoples-Jones. It's not like he was on the field and you go, okay, this is why he was the #1 recruit coming out of high school, going into Michigan. We see it. But no, every once in a while, you would see a play where you go, okay, that kid has something. He has the size. He has the athleticism. And of course, that's not going to translate to production every single time. We talk about this all the time, that the running back position matters a lot more for size and athleticism there. And at wide receiver, you want to more so chase the production. But we are talking about guys that are literally free right now. So of course, you're not going to be finding perfect profiles. And what you really want to see with Donovan Peoples-Jones is you want to see a path for him to eventually have opportunity in the Cleveland Browns offense. And my God, this path is wide open. So you look at this wide receiver room, and you know I've been saying that while I love Odell Beckham Jr., he's a sell in dynasty for me. Same thing about Jarvis Landry. Never really liked Jarvis Landry, but anyway, they're both sells for me. And it's because the contract situations for every wide receiver in Cleveland right now. So you look at Odell Beckham Jr., and Odell is currently owed $0 on the dead cap for 2022. We have talked about this way too much. I don't want to spend a single second talking about that. And Jarvis Landry, he's owed $3 million, but his entire contract next year is $14 million. So essentially, the Browns can decide to save $11 million if they do cut Jarvis Landry. Maybe they're willing to go out and just give the money to Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe they pay him actually less per year and essentially get a younger Jarvis Landry. And also, Rashad Higgins, someone that saw a significant amount of usage when Odell did go down last year, is playing under the last contract year of this deal. So all of a sudden, you can paint a picture where, of course, the Browns can't move on from every single one of these wide receivers. That would be insane, and they would never do that. They would way rather overpay one of Jarvis Landry or one of Odell Beckham Jr. compared to moving on from both and having absolutely nothing at the position. But they could be in a situation where they go, okay, Odell has another disappointing year. We're not going to be paying him $15 million. We're going to save that money. We're going to spend it elsewhere. We are going to bring back Jarvis Landry and let Rashad Higgins walk as well. We're going to step Donovan Peoples-Jones up into a role where he can be the alpha X wide receiver for this offense. And of course, that's going to take an impressive season upcoming for Donovan Peoples-Jones. But he's a second-year wide receiver now. So I think he's at the very least worth a shot when there's a path here for him to eventually get targets. I mean, this isn't the same situation that you have with a Tylan Wallace over in Baltimore, who you're seeing Hollywood Brown on the roster for a few more years. You're seeing Devin Duvernay. You're seeing Miles Boykin. There are a lot of wide receivers in that room under contract. In Cleveland, it's different. And Donovan Peoples-Jones could theoretically be a top 2 wide receiver in this depth chart next season. So now our next wide receiver, I didn't even want to include him on this list because he actually was drafted in rookie drafts this year, but we got questions over on Patreon asking if we can cut him for, I believe the guy that they wanted to cut him for was Quadri Allison. And I was saying, what? No, not at all. Dez Fitzpatrick. Okay, so guys, I understand Dez Fitzpatrick a lot less appealing now, given the fact that they do go out there and trade for Julio Jones. But with Fitzpatrick, while he wasn't the best wide receiver prospect, I mean, the worst thing that you're going to see is the fact that he was there all 5 years at Louisville. And if you look at historical hit rates, I mean, that's like a death nail for these wide receivers. Staying at a college all 5 years, unless you're a Cooper Kupp, it's not going to work out well for you. But here, if you look beyond that, with Dez Fitzpatrick, he was actually productive on the same roster as Tutu Atwell. We know Tutu Atwell, a very good wide receiver in college, and was able to go in the second round this past year's NFL draft class. Dez Fitzpatrick has the size. He's 6'2", 202 pounds, and he gets drafted at the very top of the 4th round of this past year's NFL draft class. And if we go right back to the contract situation here, while yes, they bring in Josh Reynolds, while yes, they do go in trade for Julio Jones, the first thing we need to address is them bringing in Josh Reynolds. And Josh Reynolds signed to a 1-year deal. Josh Reynolds only on this roster for 2021, nothing beyond that. And Julio Jones, while yes, he has a lot of guaranteed money this season, which is a main reason why Atlanta wanted to move on from him. If you look at next season, and I'm not saying Julio Jones is 100% going to get cut, but I'm saying these are players that are costing nothing right now, so it's at least worth a shot to play the what-if game. Julio Jones is only owed $2 million on the dead cap. And we understand that, I mean, he's going to be 33. How long are you going to be expecting wide receivers at the NFL level to be able to sustain their play where they can earn that top dollar contract and the team isn't going to look to move on from him? So with Julio, I'm not saying he's 100% getting cut, but I'm saying it's a possibility. I'm saying if he does have another injury-plagued season, what that's going to do is that's going to put the Tennessee Titans in a situation where they're most likely not going to want to bring him back next year. And then they're going to be looking at their wide receiver room going, okay, we got A.J. Brown and Dez Fitzpatrick, and that's it, under contract next year. We don't have our 2nd-round pick because we traded it for Julio Jones. And it's just a thought experiment, just going, what if? And even if you don't believe in him in the long term, maybe if they end up moving on from Julio Jones, you can end up trading him for possibly a 2nd-round pick next offseason if there is some hype circulating. Now, our last player we are going to be talking about is a wide receiver prospect that was very, very bad, to be completely honest. I mean, there's nothing you like to see on this profile. Josh Palmer. Literally, I guess you could say what's nice in this profile is the fact that he is 6'1", 210 pounds, and also the NFL draft capital. I mean, I was literally jaw to the floor whenever we saw the Chargers take Josh Palmer at the beginning of the 3rd round. I literally sat there and went, who the hell is Josh Palmer? Because he was someone that wasn't on my radar. I don't think he was on many radars going into the NFL draft, and it's because he doesn't have that great of a profile coming out of Tennessee, and he doesn't really have any excuses for not having that top-end production. So first thing I want to say is Josh Palmer, most likely not a good real-life NFL wide receiver, and I think everybody understands that. But what we have to look at is this situation for 2022. And with Josh Palmer, he's going to a team that has Mike Williams with only 1 year left under contract. And if you look at the wide receiver snaps for the Los Angeles Chargers last year, obviously Keenan Allen at 1, then Mike Williams at 2, and then the 3rd guy on that team in snaps was Jalen Guyton. And here with Jalen Guyton, he actually has his last year under contract in 2021 as well. So you're looking at a situation where Josh Palmer is this season going to be the 3rd target at the wide receiver position for Justin Herbert. And then next year, he could potentially be the 2nd option on a Justin Herbert-led offense when Justin Herbert's going into year 3. So very similar to Dez Fitzpatrick. You don't like the wide receiver talent at all. I mean, there's nothing really with this profile I can point to get you excited. But what we can say is, well, if we do see the Mike Williams and the Jalen Guyton departure, and all of a sudden a lot of people are looking at Josh Palmer as the wide receiver that's going to be number 2 on that depth chart next offseason, possibly you can look to maybe not even sell him straight up for a 2nd. Maybe you need a package of 4th with him to go get that 2nd-round pick. But that's kind of what you're looking to do with all these players at the back half of your roster. I mean, the guys that are going to be the last few spots, if you're dumpster diving, you're just trying to paint yourself a picture on how you can eventually flip this player for a profit, even if you don't believe in the talent. And I think all the players on this list, I mean, easily fit that profile. But thank you, my dudes. I'm sorry that this is a little bit of a shorter video, but of course, go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, and tell me who your favorite waiver wire wide receiver is. Doesn't have to be from this video. Can be. I don't care. Just let me know who they are. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. Thank you so much for everyone joining the flock in Will, Wesley, Ethan, Sabres, Jonah, Austin, Andrew, Doug, Brandon, and Adam. Thank you so much, my dudes.